It's a beautiful day in central Arkansas, and I should be out riding. And I'm sitting here in front of my computer. I'm going to make a video talking about motorcycles and what I owned over the years. And the title of this is What Motorcycles Have You Owned? The reason I put that title that way, I like to have a discussion for people to maybe, down in the comments, put down, hey, my first bike was, I'm currently riding, I've owned 12 bikes in my lifetime, or, this is my first bike I've owned, this is what I got, and whatever, it's just a conversation. The old Hippie-Biker here, and let's get started on this, okay? Probably could say that I started riding on mini bikes and such. I never owned a mini bike myself. My cousin owned one, and quite a few of my friends owned one, and I rode on mini bikes, when I was a kid. But my mother wouldn't allow me to have one. Anyways, my father, he was into motorcycling, and he owned a couple motorcycles. I remember growing up. The first one that I remember that he had up until he passed away was a 1948 Indian Chief that he happened to buy while he was stationed down at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when he came back from Korea. And my dad also owned an old 45 WL, which I have a picture of. I don't have a picture of the Indian, but the last time I saw the Indian was after my father died. It was in the friend of the family's garage. That Indian is someplace over in Chicago, maybe in Wisconsin or someplace like that. I don't know whatever happened to the 45 or how long my dad actually owned the 45. I remember getting a ride on it. First exposure to the motorcycle, so it was mini bikes. My dad died though when I was 12 years old. My mother, she didn't want me to get into motorcycles. What I did when I was 17, I ran off into the Army. And while I was in the Army, a buddy of mine named Arnie, he taught me how to ride on a 1970 Honda CL 350. And right here's a picture of that, of me sitting on it, drinking some wine. I was imitating the photographs from Life magazine, the Hollister incident, but that was taken on Thanksgiving 1973. I went down to A1 Cycles in Killeen, Texas, and bought me a 1973 Suzuki TC 125 Prospect. But that's a picture of me playing around on it, trying to do wheelies and things like that. Here's another picture of me and my Army buddy Pat Obrecht. He was on a Yamaha 125, and I was on my Suzuki TC. We were down at Stillhouse Lake there outside of Killeen, fooling around, and the person taking the pictures, he didn't keep us in focus, but it was fun. And anyways, my first bike was a 1973 Suzuki TC 125. I had it about 3 months or so, and then I took it back to A1 Cycles and I traded it in on a used 1971 Honda 350, similar to the picture I have here. This is not a picture of my actual bike, but it is the same color scheme and everything. I rode that motorcycle from Fort Hood, Texas, towards Toledo, Ohio, until I broke down somewhere in Kentucky and had to have my mother come and pick me up. And I had that bike up in Toledo, Ohio. I sold it in '75 to get money to pay for a plane ticket to go back to Texas. But, I went back to Texas, lived a while in Texas, didn't have a bike at the time. I did have access to an OZ1 while I was working in Texas. I was there for about a year and a half. 1976, I re-enlisted into the Army. And then after I went back in, assigned to Redstone Arsenal in Alabama, where I took training as a Pershing electronic repairer. That's why I was there. Off another Army buddy of mine, I bought a 1972 CB 350, and I had that for most of the period of time I was stationed at Redstone there in Alabama. I had another Army buddy there that had an old CB 200, and he had a Harley Davidson trike. Well, I traded my CB 350 for his 200 and a trike similar to the one pictured here. It was a 1948. 48's a magic number, but it was a 1948 HD Cervicar. It was a project that I was going to restore it and everything, but I got orders to go to Germany. So I wind up selling the CB200 to one of the guys that was still in school there at Redstone Arsenal. And I sold the trike to a fellow soldier that was from Georgia. And I went over to Germany, and for my birthday, I bought me a 1979 Harley-Davidson Sportster XLCH, which I had that from June 78 until I left in January 1980. I picked up that bike, the Eric Kraft Harley-Davidson, to pick up the bike on June 15, 1978. So I had that bike, took it to Switzerland, took it all over southern Germany, and had a really great time on it. And if you want to know about more of my time on it, look at my videos, my rocker memories. I'll post a link to it somewhere, wherever it is that you put over on that side, I don't know. Anyways, that was my sixth bike, a 1979 Harley-Davidson Sportster. Well, in 1980, I got out of the Army and headed back home, and because I had to abandon my Sportster, and since I had been spoiled, becoming a Harley fanboy, whatever you want to call them, I didn't have the money to purchase another Harley Davidson. And Harley Davidsons of all sorts, new and used and everything, in the 80s, from the early 80s to the late 80s, they were hard to come by. I dragged my feet until 1985, not having a motorcycle, and I finally, with a little bit of a tax refund I got back, I went and bought this old XL 175, a 1976 XL 175. And that's the motorcycle I had when I met my wife. Between 80 and 85, I had gone to college. I worked as a disc jockey. I worked in a photography shop. In 85, summer of 85, I decided to go back to school to finish my bachelor's degree. You can see in this picture there's two helmets on the bike, so she could ride with me. Went out and bought her own helmet in 1985. It was the first time she ever rode on a motorcycle, and she's been riding with me ever since. I received some back pay from VA. I did two things. I found this 1977 Yamaha 650 for sale for $650, and I bought me a new Nikon camera. Anyways, I got me a motorcycle, and that was my eighth bike, a 1977 Yamaha XS 650. I owned that bike from 1987 until 97. And, my wife and I, we moved to Little Rock, Arkansas in 92. The only thing we had was the 77 Yamaha. My wife became pregnant, and the year that my oldest son was born, while I was working for the railroad at the time as transporting crews around and everything, I picked me up a 1968 BSA Lightning that I was going to fix up to ride. I always wanted a BSA, never owned a BSA until then. Between 93 and 97, the time that I actually owned it, we were struggling. We wind up having two kids. Well, I bought the BSA Lightning, and I also, during it, in about 96, a year before my second son was born, I bought me a 1975 Honda CB 550 K1, and I had three bikes, no car. And my youngest son came along in 97, and I had to, put my big boy pants on and sell my motorcycles and buy a car, because I was a dad, and a husband. I had two kids, but no car. Sadly, I sold my dependable 650 Yamaha, my dependable 550 Honda, and my project, the 68 BSA, and bought a car. T99 that I bought a Suzuki. I had the Suzuki, and then I bought a 2003 Honda Shadow Spirit. I sold the Suzuki in 2003 after I bought the Spirit. The 11th bike was the Suzuki Savage. The 12th bike was the Honda Shadow. I really enjoyed those bikes. The Shadow got repoed, but I had it for 3 years. That was a pretty awesome thing. So I went a couple of years without a motorcycle, and then in 2008, I bought me a 2007 883 Sportster. That bike was really a lot of fun, and I rode it for about 6 years. Traded it off to buy another car, because I needed two cars. Now, by that time, I had two sons in high school. Anyways, I went a couple more years without a bike, Then I finally bought my 14th bike, which I bought brand new off the showroom floor the winter of 2000. 2015 to 16 was a Harley Davidson Sportster XL 1200T. And I had that bike for until 2017. And that bike, I took it to Houston once. I took it to Birmingham, Alabama. And, you know, those 1200Ts are pretty good. I put some bigger boards on it, and I put some buckhorn bars on it. It was a pretty good bike, and I really regret that I traded it. But what I traded it for was a 2016 FLD Dyna Switchback. I did that because I was supposed to have been in a reality mini-series with a group of guys. We were going to be talking about our faith and making a motorcycle trip. At the time, my oldest son decided he was going into the Army, and I didn't want to leave my wife alone for a couple of weeks while I went on this motorcycle trip. So I backed out being in that reality show, but I bought I had the Switchback, and I had it for about a year and a half or so. Then I sold it to pay taxes when I retired. It was a pretty neat bike, I really enjoyed it. It looked like an old electric glide from the late 60s. It had been customized, a little bit, stripped down a little bit. And so I wind up selling the bike. I had it paid off, and I sold the bike to pay some taxes. And with what the money I had left over that year, I bought me two bikes. The first one was a 1996 Kawasaki Vulcan with a Champion sidecar on it, which I always wanted a sidecar rig. And the second one was my 2002 Harley Davidson Sportster Sports. I bought the Kawasaki in June, which was a couple months after I sold the Switchback. August is when I bought the Sportster Sports. And then I had two bikes, pretty cool. Actually, I had three bikes, because I also bought in 2018 was a Yamaha 650 Project. Missed my Yamaha, and I found this Project. No longer have the bike. I gave the bike to my younger brother, which he wind up abandoning it this last year, but I gave it to him as a project, hoping that he'd fix it up, because he's been saying that he wanted a motorcycle and this and that, and so I gave it to him. 2019, I bought me another Sportster Sport, a 99 model. Of course, it had the tins off a different motorcycle. Pretty neat looking bike too, which I was going to fix up, and I'll wind up selling it to change up and fix up my other Sportster Sports, which I did, I put some blacked out spoked wheels on it, and I had to have some work done on it and everything, and I took it to a trip up to Sturgis, and I kept that bike up until I traded it in 2021, for my 2001 FXD WG Wide Glide, a 2001 model, and that's what I'm riding today, and it's what I've been making videos with today. Anyway, that's a rundown of all the motorcycles I've owned through the years. And who knows? I've owned 21 bikes. I think I missed one bike out of all the ones I listed, because I had another 650 Yamaha that I left in Huntington. If you like this video, hit like, Don't forget to share the video and subscribe. Oh, Hippie-Biker here. Bye-bye.